Hey guys, Annie at CarStereoChick.com, and I am here late on a Saturday night playing around with the Alpine iLX 007 and Pioneer's AppRadio 4, and I wanted to go over the key differences between these two stereos because there is quite a few differences, and I'm going to turn this baby around and show you what I'm talking about. Hang on one second. Alright guys, so to the left we have our Alpine iLX 007, and to the right we have our AppRadio 4. First thing you might notice is the Alpine is definitely a slightly larger screen, and you may also notice all these cables hanging out of the board. The Alpine has one USB input. Pioneer has two USBs, also has an HDMI input. The other key takeaway, the Alpine, it really is just dedicated for CarPlay. It's only going to work with iPhone 5, iPhone 6, and whatever Apple comes up with after that. On the Pioneer, you could actually connect an iPod to the USB input if you wanted to. You actually cannot do that with the Alpine. If you plug an iPod in, you'll get a USB error, which I think is kind of surprising. There's also no built-in Bluetooth with the Alpine. All of your phone calls are going to be done through that lightning cable, so you really have to be connected if you want to use the Alpine CarPlay stereo. Whereas on the Pioneer AppRadio 4, that does have Bluetooth, so if you just want to go for a quick ride and stream some music, don't really want to plug your phone in, you don't have to with the Pioneer. Although I don't really think it's that big of a deal as long as you mount the USB cable in a convenient location. I plug my iPhone in every day for my car ride. Alright, so let's check this out. One thing that's really cool about the Alpine that I do feel is a key advantage over the Pioneer is this nice big Siri button right here. That's actually a hard button. The other buttons that you see on the right and the left, those are touchscreen buttons. The center button is like your menu button. That's a hard button, so you can kind of feel your way while you're driving. Okay, that's my center button. That brings you to radio, which I don't think anybody uses FM and AM anymore, but if you do, it does have radio. Also brings you to CarPlay, and there's dedicated audio-video input. You could also do a backup camera with this if you wanted to. So if I select CarPlay, select this button right down here, I can kind of see all my sources. That's pretty much what the stereo does. The really nice thing about this is that Siri button. Again, if you're trying to make your driving experience safer and easier, you can basically reach over, feel that button, and activate Siri. And you can tell her to find you Chinese food. You could tell her to play whatever music you want her to play. You can tell her to send a text message to somebody or call somebody. So in that aspect, it does work pretty well. Now this radio's in demo mode, so it's gonna kind of advertise itself. But otherwise, the CarPlay side of it, that's pretty much to be the same across both. So if you're listening to music, this is what you're going to see on the Alpine, and that's basically what you're going to see on the Pioneer, but a slightly smaller screen. Alright, so hang on just a second, and I'm going to go ahead and switch this iPhone over to the AppRadio. And we're back. And so you can see this is the same now playing menu that you would see with CarPlay using AppRadio. If I go tap that little button right down there, my fingers are cold. There it goes. That brings you to the same CarPlay menu where you could, make and receive phone calls. They're both going to pull up all your contacts, or Siri's going to ask you, who do you want to call? There's all my contacts loading up right there. So on that aspect, they're really the same. One thing you'll notice is that the Pioneer is all touchscreen. There are no hard buttons on here. It also has this strip here on the left, which does make your screen size a little bit smaller. But there are some key advantages to this model. The biggest thing is, all these extra inputs. You're not limited to just using your iPhone 5 and up. You do have an HDMI input on here. So if you wanted to do video through your iPhone, you technically could. You need one of these little adapters, a little digital HDMI AV adapter from Apple, and that's going to change things up because that needs to plug both into the HDMI input and into your lightning connector, and then your phone plugs into this. So it's not something you want to be changing up while you're driving. You really want to pick, do I want to use this for CarPlay stereo, or do I want to use this for an AppRadio Mode stereo? Now, AppRadio Mode is different, and I will tell you flat out right now, it doesn't work with iOS 8. AppRadio Mode was developed, with Pioneer for select apps. Like if you really love the navigation app Waze, that's really the only way to get it up on the screen, except it doesn't really work right now due to the recent software update. Waze will never work through CarPlay. I believe Google bought them, so we might see something next year with integration with Android on that, but nothing I don't think we'll see through CarPlay with that. So if you want to use navigation with CarPlay, you're going to use Apple Maps. And I have to say, it actually works pretty well on both of these stereos. It really does. So I'm not too sure that that's going to be a huge deal for a lot of people, but that is the navigation system that you can use through CarPlay. Now, let's say a couple of years from now, or a year from now, or whatever, you decide to move away from Apple and you get yourself a Samsung or an Android-based phone. Now, certain Android-based phones will work in AppRadio Mode with Pioneer. For that, you need a different set of adapters, and instead of seeing this Apple CarPlay up here, you would see AppRadio Mode. So if you want to hang on just one more second, I will show you how that works with a Samsung Galaxy S4. And I'm back, and I will give you a perfect example why AppRadio Mode with Android doesn't always work. I had a perfectly charged up S4 that I haven't touched for 2 days, and just went to use it. The battery's completely dead, and even plugging it into this doesn't really give us enough of a trickle charge to make that work. What I will show you is if you do want to do AppRadio Mode for Android, you need a different set of adapters, and they plug into different ports. So this is actually connected to USB 2, and this adapter, off the top of my head, I think it's a CD-IV, I want to say 202 AV, but definitely check my blog because these part numbers are so similar. Besides that, I needed this little Samsung tip adapter to make that work. And when it does work, it actually works well. I have some pictures on the blog that show that it works with Waze, and I will shoot another video when I'm positive that S4 is actually charged up and going to work. But when you're switching between all these different devices, you have to set it in the menu. So this is not something you're going to be able to switch easily while you're driving. So if you have two different phones, it's not really going to be easy to switch between your iPhone doing CarPlay and your Android doing AppRadio Mode. You have to go into your AV settings. You have to go to input output. You have to tell it what kind of smartphone you're using. So for Android, I have it set up on others and connection via USB. If I want to do iPhone, I have to change it to this. If I want to do AppRadio Mode with iPhone, which I think is only going to work if you have older software on your phone, really. You have to switch it to digital AV adapter right there from USB. So this radio definitely covers more phones, but you can't use them all at the same time. They're completely different dedicated modes. One thing that is kind of cool about this Pioneer stereo, which I was pretty impressed with, is in the actual audio menu, you have a 13-band EQ. You also have digital time alignment, and you have a 4-volt pre-out. It's really about time we've seen that in an AppRadio model. None of the previous models have that. They all had a low voltage pre-out. Some of them only have 2 pre-outs. They just weren't built for doing an audio system. Now, the Alpine, on the other hand, if you're just looking at the stereo itself, you've got some basic adjustments in here. You got balance fader, bass treble, subwoofer level, some bass adjustments, media expander. That's not really anything you want to use. If you're listening to extremely compressed music, it's helpful, but normally I leave things like that off. And when I say extremely compressed, I mean like things off of YouTube or 32 kilobytes per second, like satellite radio. And then this also has built-in preset EQs. They both have that. However, if you want to access a 9-band EQ with digital time alignment, and the Alpine you can, but you have to use their Tune It app to do that. So that's kind of actually a neat thing because it's pretty easy to adjust the EQ from the phone, but some people I don't think would like that. Some people would probably prefer to make those adjustments from the stereo. Now, let's talk about the sound quality difference. I apologize, I don't have any phones connected to these right now, but there is a sound quality difference, and I've had time tonight to really spend quite a while playing several different Ayaska discs between these two that are recorded just for tuning purposes. And my initial impressions was that the Pioneer sounded slightly muddier than the Alpine. The Alpine was definitely had more detail, more clarity. Now, after listening to it for a long time tonight, I honestly think I might have had a setting off, like either bass boost or something that maybe somebody touched on the display that I forgot to check in the audio menu. Because listening tonight extensively and really making sure everything was flat, that there was no time alignment or anything on either one of them, or soundstage adjustments on, there was really very little difference, and I had to listen quite a few times. I actually had two iPhones connected to these, started them both at the same tracks, and just flipped back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What I can tell you is that they are extremely close in sound quality, and to me, the Alpine had a very, very slight edge over the Pioneer. An edge that I think most people would not be able to tell the difference between. So at that point, you want to think about how you're going to be using these stereos. All right, if you're looking mainly for a dedicated CarPlay head unit, I think the Alpine is easier to use, and it's got a nice large 7-inch touchscreen. If you don't want to be locked into Apple, the Pioneer AppRadio 4 may be a better option for you. Even if at the end of the day you're only left with a USB and Bluetooth audio, you still have more that you can do than if you buy the iLX 007 and decide you want a different phone. You're going to have to buy a new stereo. So that's one thing Pioneer has going for it. But there it is, guys. I wanted you to see it side by side and maybe get a better understanding of how these two radios work and all the different features. If you have any questions, please post it in the comments. And again, I will follow up with that Samsung S4 so you can see AppRadio Mode actually working in the AppRadio 4. So sorry about that, guys. All right, have a good night.